Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
Trump mocks the communists, declares he'd be the greatest communist in history. We'll get into that. He deserves a lot of praise for that one. We'll talk about it. We're also going to be talking to Sheriff Richard Mack, CSPOA.org, about his incredible book, The Democrat Murder of America, Demagoguery in the First Degree. We're going to be talking about the LAPD and their flock cameras. We're going to be talking to an election expert, we hope. And it all starts now. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. The good sheriff is in the house. Welcome, Sheriff Mack.
Beautiful Tuesday morning.
Oh man, Donald.
And I have
Donald,
a quote, and I have a real quick quote from the book.
Yes, sir.
Okay, this is President George Washington in his farewell address. Political parties are likely to become potent engines by which cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled man will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and to usurp for themselves the reins of government. That is exactly what happened between our Democrats and Republicans, and that is exactly the reason we wrote this book.
And that's exactly the reason Sam Bushman says the party's over. By the way, if you go to murderofamerica.com, then you can check out the details for the new book, and you can learn more about what's happening with this. The Murder of America book, really points out the Democrats because they're the ones primarily violating principles that make the destruction of America possible. Republicans are guilty too, but not near to the degree that, in my opinion, Republicans are. Republicans are bad, but they're not doing near the damage that the Democrats are. Now, there's some Republicans that are. Lindsey Graham, for example, I'm grateful, not grateful he died, but grateful that he's out, Sheriff, because he's one of the ones that's very destructive.
Yeah, he was. And you're absolutely correct about, look at just your first lead-in comment about President Trump mocking communism. He has said, and I totally agree with him, that the greatest threat to America right now is the communist movement in the Democrat Party. You really don't see any Republicans pushing for the extremism of socialism or communism. And as a matter of fact, they seem to be fighting it tooth and nail. And so this uniparty thing really sometimes just doesn't carry any weight.
You're right about that. Let's talk about this point that Donald Trump made about communism, because I think he did a superb job at this. He really basically, he said he'd be the greatest communist in history amid criticism of democratic socialists. So he highlighted that all these roads lead to communism, whether it's socialist, democratic socialist, national socialist, whatever. So in a bold statement during the NATO summit, is where he was. And he basically said he could surpass Lenin or everybody else if you ever led a communist regime, because he said all you got to do is you got to promise people things.
Right.
Using this hypothetical is what he focused on, basically saying, look, I promise you a free house. All I got to do is murder other people and take their house and give it to you. He emphasized his personal oversight in some of these national restoration projects. Anyway, he really doubled down. Let me just give you the third great example. When you're a communist, you promise everybody a sucker. I'll give you a sucker or a candy bar if you vote for me. And then right on down the line, no matter what, I can make everything awesome for you. The problem is, he says, then you'll be bankrupt in a year. Everything will be melting down. It sounds great on the surface, but the truth is he highlighted many notable moments. And it was a humorous interaction with a reporter about being so secure or insecure and shy. And really, he doubled down and just basically said, listen, your communist system flat out sounds good if you lie to everybody. Sounds good if you whisper in everybody's ear, Sheriff. But the fact is, it's absolutely bogus. And he put that on the international stage, my friend.
Well, yeah, they're so they're so obsessed with him being a king and a self-appointed king. What in the world do you think would happen is if we were a communist country, there's always a communist dictator that goes along with that. As I pointed out in the book also, Nikita Khrushchev. And folks, now the Democrat Party is substituting themselves for the fulfillment of the threats and warnings, maybe even prophecies from Nikita Khrushchev, who said they would destroy us from within. The Democrat Party is taking those reins and are doing exactly that.
They're literally carrying out his promise. I don't know if they realize that's what they're doing, but that's what's happening. And there's many Republicans that are on board as well, sadly, but it's primarily the Democrats driving this narrative, Sheriff, and that's your point.
It is. And Rick Dalton and I were having dinner last night, and I was giving Rick some of my books to spread around and make sure that he had one and put it out to his list. And a man came by and touched me on the shoulder, and I thought, oh, somebody knows me. So one of my old high school friends happens to be here tonight. And it wasn't. It was a total stranger, but I guess he looked at the book. And I really wish that I had invited him to sit down. He really kind of took me by surprise. And by the time I realized that I wished that I invited him to sit down, he had left the building. And he said, "It looks like to me you have the wrong name on the book." And I'm sure he was looking at the word Democrat and wanted to replace it with Republican. And I would so want to ask him what you and I were just talking about. Show me where the Republican Party is pushing communism and socialism. And yes, there's been Republicans that have pushed socialism. Graham,
Sure.
Graham did, and so did John McCain. But again, nothing to the degree that's going on right now with the Democrat Party.
And this is exactly why I highlight these two stories together. The Donald Trump story on the international stage, flat out mocking and rejecting communism, and your book at the same time highlighting this reality check, because it makes the point. MAGA or President Trump isn't promoting communism. Now, there's some things that he's doing that I'm not comfortable with. I get it. But when you compare the extreme nature, that's really what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, it is. And this lady that just won in New York, completely don't just defund the police, get rid of police, get rid of prisons. Do you know what she is essentially saying? We are legalizing murder, and there's not anything government will ever do about it.
And we're going to have anarchy as a result of that, which will eventually turn into a tyranny. All anarchies eventually turn into tyranny because somebody wants to crack down and fill that vacuum. And they get backed to do so by saying, well, we've got to have order of some kind, unjustified, but people follow that cycle if we don't keep that cycle in check with a constitutional republic, Sheriff.
Well, that's always the result of socialism and communism. That's always tyrannical. Even worse, it's dictatorial. Maybe tyranny and dictatorial governments are the same, similar, but probably not exactly the same. You could still have tyranny, like the tyranny we have in the United States, where government just goes too far in a few things, like writing tickets every day, and just the constant barrage of bureaucrats who don't answer to anybody and just get to do anything they want, like the Sackett family in Idaho, who took their farm and land away from them because a big rain caused ponds all over their yard, and now they're violating the Water Preservation
Waterways Act. It's whacked out as all get out. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's how stupid government gets, because bureaucrats are left to do whatever they want.
Well, and they violate private property rights, and it goes on and on. The midterm elections are coming up. I want to discuss those for a minute. Jeremiah, let's go ahead and skip the floater break. Our guest, Mark H. Gotz, with us, ladies and gentlemen. He's the president of the Election Experts, Inc. private organization. It's a nonprofit organization designed to help people really make a difference when it comes to elections. Election Experts, or theelectionexperts.net, is the website. And they're unique in this election integrity situation. We'll talk about it. Hi, Mark. You've been around since 1998 working on election integrity, well before it became a flash in the pan, sir.
Well, it's an interesting thing to talk about. I mean, when you look at it, what our elections looked like in 1998 and then in 2000 with the Bush-Gore situation, which I was in the middle of, you
Hanging
begin
chads and
to
such. Go ahead, sir.
Mondami, yeah, Mondami in New York only got like 14% of the vote in New York City. He only got 1 million votes. There's 8 million voters in New York City. So the
Well, let me
apathy of
think about
voters
that.
is
What's that?
incredible.
1/15th or 1/12th, I guess.
That's about 14% of the total vote that's
Wow.
available.
Okay.
So, and if you look at these primary elections that we've been seeing, and look at the amount of voters that are available that are registered, and then the amount that actually come out and vote, you'll find that there's an incredible shortfall. I mean, it was the same thing in the Pratt race in California. Pratt's race is incredible. I mean, if you want to spend a little time on that, or tell me what you want me to do, Sam. This is your show, and I'm enjoying it just listening to you and Richard.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about parties and partisan politics. In Sheriff Mack's book, The Democrat Murder of America, Demagoguery in the First Degree, he really attacks Democrats, but he's really attacking the destructive violation of principles that are happening more so in the Democratic Party than the Republican Party. But really, when you read the book, hey, when you violate those principles, he really attacks everyone. Because the principles in America can save this country, and violation of the principles can destroy this country. And that's really what the book is about. That's why it's demagoguery in the first degree. But I want to bring this up because one of the big points made in the book is this idea of parties. George Washington warned against parties. I believe parties are criminal organizations. And I'll tell you why, Mark, and then I'll get your take. You may not go that far. Feel free to say what you will. If you say that's not right, Sam, whatever you want to say, I'm not trying to bait you into saying anything. But here's the way I look at it. A party is nothing more than a private organization. So why, if does the Republican Party or the Democratic Party get a better position at the trough of controlling elections than, say, my radio program, Liberty Roundtable Live? See, I think Liberty Roundtable Live should be able to pull the lever of government in my favor at the expense of everybody else. No, that's not how it works. And so we all have God-given inalienable rights and authority to delegate. That's what elections are about. We don't have the right to give that authority to a private corporation that then seats itself and then eventually over time manipulates laws and rules and guidelines and regulations and everything to where now it gets into the driver's seat and everybody else is disenfranchised. If I'm not a member of the Republican or Democratic Party, I don't get any primary elections in many states. I just have to wait till the till the general election. And then on top of that, I have to hopefully have a candidate that even runs on that third party, knowing full well that most of the time it's futile. Your thoughts, Mark?
Well, basically, you're going back to Washington and the factions that were created when the country was created. You're talking about, you had the Federalists and you had what they called the Democrat Republicans, which is what Jefferson was. And basically, they had just started the
country. Weren't they also called the Whigs at the time?
I'm sorry?
Weren't they called the Whigs at the time?
The Whig Party was, I think, part of Washington's party at that time, but they were really broken up into the Federalists who wanted a federal government and strong centralized federal government. And then you had the
Anti-Federalists.
Right. They wanted states to be the strongest portion of the government. So there's always been factions. Didn't really happen in the first election because everybody was on board with Washington, and they felt that was the only way the country would stay together. So they even, he wanted to get out after the first term, but they convinced him that if he did, it could still cause serious cracks in the government that they had created. So factions go back a long time. Parties have come and gone. The Whig Party was here, they're gone. And that's not to say that the parties we have now will be here in 50 years, because they are going into poor directions, and we're getting more control over our elections by people not following the law. And it's amazing how in your face this is, that they don't follow the law. I mean, just point in fact, we have the Pratt race in California, which got a lot of publicity. And of course, Pratt ends up getting taken out of that race on the after-hour votes, as I call them, or ghost votes. If you look at that race, and I happened to look at it when it was in process, and on the night of the election, he was in second place with a strong 43,000 or 33,000 vote over the third place lady, who was going to, concede the election, but they talked her out of it. So then what happened was you had overtime, as I like to call it. And in the overtime, she comes back, and as a matter of fact, I was doing the numbers on this because I'm more of a numbers guy than a verbal guy, even though I wrote a book called How to Inspect, Validate, Audit, and Enforce Federal Election Laws. But there were 526,000 votes on election night, and they said that was 64% of the vote. At that time, Bass had 37% of the vote, Pratt had 31% of the vote, and Raymond had 25% of the vote. So you could see where the levels were going. But because it went into overtime, there were additional 268,000 votes that needed to be counted. Well, how did they run out in percentages? Well, Bass got just about the same. She got 36%. Rahman got 44%, and Pratt got 20%. So with an election that was primarily all vote by mail, the situation was that in the overtime, Rahman got more votes than Bass did to make up the differentiation over Pratt. That is by design, and that is what vote by mail can do if there's nobody watching it.
And to double down and make your point, Mark, Glenn Beck over at The Blaze just wrote, California's election system isn't broken. It's deliberately rigged, Sheriff Mack.
Yeah. Mark, first of all, thank you so much for the work you've done. And so I know this is probably your biggest part of being on the interview, but I've got to hear this right away. So how do we prove and investigate that just happened? I want sheriffs to investigate these crimes, but I also want to have them something concrete that they can actually determine how that cheated. How did they cheat? And how do we determine that they cheated?
Well, okay, that's a very good question because we all want proof, and you get that through discovery. And what do we use for discovery? This particular situation, and I've tried to get this message to Pratt, that basically they need to go in and request a count of the vote by mail envelopes and the inspection of the vote by mail envelopes. He has the right to do that. Now, the election officials, if they have a problem, are going to throw everything they can at him so he can't see that. But California uses as their validity of their vote by mail signature match. And signature match is a great process. I've seen it. Bank tellers do it every day. And so if you go in and they say, we're not going to allow you to look at the envelopes, count the envelopes, because the audit is basically very simple. You take the total amount of votes cast, and then you take the total amount of envelopes and see if they match. Now, that might be a problem in this race.
Mark, you also take the amount of votes that are actually registered compared to the amount of votes that were cast, right?
Well, exactly. I mean, what the election officials tell you that was counted, you need to have envelopes that match that. Now, this might be a problem in this particular race because, you had the governor's race going on the same ballot. And the mystifying fact is that in the mayor's race, there were 758,000 votes cast, all right? But in the governor's race, and this is just in the top three finishers, I didn't do the whole run. Right. In the top three finishers in the mayor's race, 758,000. In the top three in the governor race, the total amount of votes cast was 1,650,000 votes. So somehow, 1 out of every 2 people who voted in the election for governor did not vote in the election for mayor. That's a little strange because I think mayors are closer to the problems that we all have rather than governors. So that's something else.
Most of the time, if you go vote, you're going to fill out the whole thing and vote for whoever you think in whatever. Once you're there and once you have the ballot in front of you, that's for the most part a given, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, some people will just vote what they call the top of the ticket. You know, if it's a presidential race, there's a certain percentage that'll only vote the top of the ticket. Well, the top of the ticket here is the governor's race, not the mayor's race. But to have half of the voters, especially with as much publicity as that LA mayor's race got, to have only half of those who voted, and this is just LA now I'm not looking at the full state. This was just in LA County. So these things need further discovery, further investigation. It can be done by third parties. You know, you can go in and look at this, but you've got to get
Really,
the
Mark,
election
the
officials.
sheriffs are the best ones to do this, though. After all, they're the chief law enforcement officer in their county. If anybody should do it, it should be a sheriff, shouldn't it?
Well, here's the problem. Sheriffs, in many cases, are politically elected. And so the sheriffs need to protect their position. This is the same thing with election lawyers. Election lawyers on the Republican side are basically corporate lawyers. Election lawyers on the Democrat side are primarily personal injury attorneys. There is a different concept of those two attorneys.
So what you're
obviously
saying,
the
what
PIs
you're
are
saying to
aggressive.
me is parties, again, are the core of the problem.
Absolutely. Because right now the parties are the power, and the power is the checkbook.
Sheriff?
Well, so I had a little question there, though. Because the mayor race is confined geographically just to Los Angeles city limits.
Mm-hmm.
So give me those numbers again, because there's the entire state of California has, what, 45 million people?
Yeah, but he's just talking about LA County.
Right. I'm quoting you numbers that I got
that's
from.
what I want to, that's what I want to make sure. So you're talking about LA area, that actually more people in that area voted for mayor than they did for governor.
No,
No,
governor
vice
than
versa.
mayor.
More people
governor than
voted
they
for
did
governor than
Yeah.
mayor, which
Which
is
yeah,
odd
I'm
because
saying
the
that-
mayor is a, you know,
Which we're saying that makes sense because it's the top of the ticket. What we're saying is the amount of differential is so extreme that it needs to be investigated because it's not normal.
right on, Sam.
Well,
Right on
if anybody
target.
should start an investigation, it should be Chad Bianco of Riverside County, because he was also a candidate for governor.
Well,
That's
now
right.
he's got a double conflict of interest. He's a member of a party, and then secondly, he was running in the race. So, wow, I don't know how to handle this one, Sheriff Mack.
But he could, what's even better though, he can call for an independent investigation and make sure that happens.
And that's what he should do.
Yeah.
Well, that's the key. That's why Pratt should, because he's a little late now to contest the election, but
Right.
Pratt should open the door to the discovery of the vote by mail to match that the signatures matched on the votes that were counted, and that the amount of votes that were counted were all sent in by mail or by a vote by mail envelope.
Now, wait a minute. I've got another question there then. Is that just a human analysis, or is there some scientific approach to comparing the two signatures?
Oh no, it's the same as they do at the banks. If you go in, if you write a check and you want to cash that at a bank, they'll
Right.
take that check and they will look at your signature and match it either with your driver's license or with what they have on their records.
But is
The
it
answer-
scientific, or is it just a human looking at it?
No, it's both. It's
Well,
they use-
actually, 90% are usually done by human investigation. So then you have to look at who's investigating and what their agenda is.
Exactly.
We'll talk about it more, ladies and gentlemen. The first half hour's over. Mark H. Gotz with us. Check out his website because it's incredible. TheElectionExperts.net. TheElectionExperts.net. They've got a book to help you know how to get all this done, by the way. It's incredible. We'll be talking about that next episode of Liberty Roundtable Live. I'm Sam Bushman with Sheriff Richard Mack and Mark Gotz. God save our constitutional republic. President Donald J. Trump mocks the communists, declared to be the greatest communist ever, highlights how it's all a giveaway, big old psychotic lie, and how it destroys countries. He was on the international stage, quadrupling down on this point. Good for the president, good for him telling the world the truth, and we the people better pay attention. I'm telling you that right now. Glenn Beck in the news, folks. Glenn Beck, California's election system isn't broken. It's deliberately rigged. Theblaze.com. You want to go check that out? Please do. We've got Sheriff Richard Mack with me, CSPOA.org for the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. Become a member of the posse today. We're also talking about his book, The Democrat Murder of America. Incredible book, basically saying, hey, you know what? It's out of control. It's deliberately destruction of America, private party style. Demagoguery in the first degree, written by Sheriff Richard Mack and Daniel Perkins, another incredible author. So 2 authors on that book. You want to get your copy today, murderofamerica.com, and the audio version's up now too. So you can get it on Kindle, audio, paperback, any way you like. We've also got Mark Gotz with us. And Mark Gotz is with the Election Experts, Inc., theelectionexperts.net. And they provide practical instruction on election verification, legal oversight, rather than political advocacy. So they're focused on, hey, the nuts and bolts of the law, how you can understand what you can do. Mark has been involved in elections since 1998, so for a long time. And we're talking about this issue with, they want you to believe they can't really count the ballots in time. They want you to wait forever. Really, that's a sign to say they want to figure out how to rig it and not get caught. Mark?
Well, Sam, right to your point. I mean, if you look at the law, and this is the problem, we don't have people looking at the law. We don't have the third parties investigating this stuff, the citizens of our country, we the people. And basically in California, they can start counting the votes 29 days before the election. That's about the same time that the vote by mail ballots go out, because they usually go out 30 days prior. So there is no reason why there can't be a election that is decided on election night in California. There's just no way. Anything after, and in this case, what we were talking about, the mayoral race, a third of the vote came in and was counted after election night. So this leaves just, strange things. And California is strange. If you look at what you need to do to register to vote, all you have to do is have an ID. It doesn't have to show your address or a government issue, and you can register the day you vote. So there are all kinds of problems in California. In fact, you don't even need to show ID to vote in California. So there are so many problems there that it needs to be revamped. And the problem is there is no stick. And more important, there are no umpires. There are no people, physical people, citizens that are going in and taking advantage of counting the vote so that they know how much vote was actually cast before all these plugins. And that's what we train people to do.
Vote watchers, and we need the vote watchers to count by precinct. See, each precinct is only about 1,000 voters on the average. And I used to have, when I was a kid, they used to vote at my house, actually. My parents would host the elections, and they'd have it at their house in their living room. People would come in and vote, and I was with them when they counted all the votes and everything else. And then each precinct would turn in the votes for their precinct. And if you had vote watchers, and then you had people swear under the penalty of perjury like we do for our taxes. And then you had those vote counts videotaped, and then each precinct could turn in their number. It doesn't take that long to count 1,000 votes if you have 2 or 3 or vote counters, 2 or 3, 4 vote counters. You're only counting 200, 300, 400 ballots per counting team in a precinct. It can be done so easily, Mark. But my problem with the pre-voting is that what if I vote for somebody and then 10 days later I watch a debate and change my mind? Or if we have elections that span this big, long stint of several months, a month before, a month after, this and that, I don't think it's a fair vote at all. What if things come to light? What if things change? What if things... and so it's a big problem that we're not addressing really at all, really, that I can see. Even the Republicans are for early voting and voting late, and when do the ballots count? And yeah, they want more accountability, but not enough, do they?
Well, this is why we try to educate election umpires, and we educate them in what we call the pre-election, election month, which is now getting even longer, and then post-election audits, and in the National Voter Registration Act law and the Help America Vote Act law, which are the 2 federal laws for federal elections. When you train an umpire, you have to train them on the rules first before you put them on the field. So we train them on the rules and we tell them how the game is played. And then we ask them to go out there and observe. And the observing is, in California, it's tough when you've got 100% vote by mail, because we do have a vote by mail program to validate that the vote by mail has been counted properly. But in early voting, what we do is we stage in front of the precinct. We don't have to be in the precinct, and we count the people who go in to vote. We do the same thing on election day. And I know in many states there are a lot of precincts to cover. It may take a lot of people. We have a formula that if you can't cover them all, you cover the most populated, and then you take that percentage and allocate it to the rest. So you can get a valid vote of how many people have voted early and election day by 8 o'clock on election night. Then you go to vote by mail, which is a little trickier, but has more areas of verification, because we train people that they need to find out how many vote by mail were sent out, and then you need to count the amount of vote by mail that are received by your election officials each day. They are supposed to keep a log on this number. You call them each day. They get their votes from drop boxes, from dropped off at their election offices, and also by mail. So each day they're going to have a total. You get that total and you keep that over the 25, 29 days before the election. And by the Sunday before election, you will have a good idea of how many votes are cast in your election. If we look at the numbers in LA, and this is all vote by mail, they had 500,000 on election day, and they ended up with almost 800,000 total. So that means 300,000 votes came in after election day. That's where the fun begins.
How many came in before election day?
The total vote count on that election, let me get my notes here real quick again, was 520,000 votes had been cast by election day, by election night. That was the original one that had Pratt up by 33,000 votes over the third place person. And then there was an additional 280,000 votes that came in. And strangely enough, the person in third place got 44% of those votes, which is more than the mayor got. So, it becomes so obvious that if nobody's going to look at it, they'll just play whatever game they need to get the person they want in elected. And that's not the way our republic was designed.
So, Sheriff Mack, it's not an election, it's a selection. That's what's really happening. Glenn Beck nailed it, and Mark's validating it. We need to dig in and get the truth, but will Bianco and company, or will anybody investigate this, do you think, Sheriff?
I'm going to email Bianco and ask him, but this really is something, because it really appears, and I think you alluded to this, Mark, that they're waiting to see how the legitimate numbers turn out so they can determine how bad they have to cheat on the mail-in ballots that are sitting there waiting to be counted. Isn't that pretty much correct?
That's right on target, Sheriff.
Okay,
It's like winning an auction. It's like winning an auction and going in to buy what you auction, and they say, no, we sold it to somebody for more money. It's just, they're playing a game. And if somebody isn't looking at them playing this game, then they're going to continue to play it. My biggest analogy real quick is I drive the highways of Florida. And basically, I'm a little heavy on my foot, and I'll go over the speed limit a little bit. But I don't get in the fast lane because people are going by me at 90 to 100 miles an hour. But it is amazing if there is a highway patrolman that you can see out a mile and a half down that's in the cross section. By the time we all get to him, we're all going 70.
Ah, yes.
So light does a lot to clean up the problems, and if your election officials do not allow you to shine that light on what they're doing, they have a problem.
Jeremiah, go ahead and skip the break. This is just too good. That brings us to your book, Mark. TheElectionExperts.net is where you can find the book. But this book is really a how-to book, educating people on what to do, how to do it, how to investigate, how to make sure that they know what they're talking about. I mean, it's really a primer, isn't it?
Well, what we do and what we try to cover is we try to get out what we've been talking about for a decade. And so, wrote the book. It covers the four columns of what we look at, which is pre-election, how to clean up your voter rolls, election month, how to validate your vote and inspect it, and then the audit vote that we talked about. The biggest thing you need to audit is the vote by mail. So we spend a lot of time on vote by mail. And then we give you the National Voter Registration Act, and we highlight in our Zoom calls, which are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we highlight there what the main things are that you need to look at in the particular areas. So we teach you the law, the sections of law that are apropos in today's world, and how to look at things. And then it's up to the people, the citizens of this country, because no elected official can do this. No person who works in government can do this. This is specifically something that the people of the United States need to step up and do their civic duty of not only voting, but inspecting to make sure that their vote is counted accurately. And the name of the book is How to, it's a how-to book, how to inspect, validate, audit, and enforce federal elections. It's on Amazon. You can go to Mark Gotz to find it, and get on our Zoom calls are all free, obviously. And the book is a few dollars, so we can afford to continue this. But that's what we do. We need people who understand the laws and understand elections to be that third party that goes in. And specifically, like in LA, you need to be able to go in there and see the validation of the vote by mail ballots via the signature match. It's a very simple thing to do. We need to train people to do that. We need to get access to that through our officials. And that's the way we clean up our elections.
Sheriff Mack, final word to you on this one.
Well, Mark, I don't know if you saw that part in the book, but we actually state that California is not the only one. We also mentioned New York, but maybe you can tell us how many others are just like California that don't require any identification. You don't have to prove who you are or prove you're a citizen. So, of course, all the illegal aliens are being allowed to vote. But literally, you could be here, and this is a quote from my book. You could literally be on vacation from Buenos Aires, Argentina, in New York or Los Angeles, walk into a polling place, tell them totally in Spanish that you want to vote in our election. They'll ask you for some sort of bogus identification, which you don't have to show at all in some places. Write down your registration and make up some address in Beverly Hills or wherever, doesn't matter, or right in downtown Manhattan, put a hotel, and you could literally vote right then and there, same day registration, vote right then and there, go home to Argentina and brag to La Prensa newspaper how you voted in America, and there's not a damn thing anybody could do about it, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't know why the people in Nevada don't go over to California to vote to kind of spew the vote there. Your ID is only your country club ID or something that doesn't even have your address on that you can use as an ID to register. And, in cleaning what we talk about in cleaning the voter rolls, there is in the law, National Voter Registration Act, a requirement that 90 days prior to a federal election, election officials are not allowed to clean their voter rolls. They have to maintain their voter rolls, yet you can register the same day. These are some of the fallacies that are in the process, because if you go to an election official now to try to clean the rolls, they're going to tell you, no, we're in the 90-day blackout period. We can't do anything with our rolls. But many states have inactive voter lists, and the inactive voter lists are basically lists of people who have moved. The National Change of Address has identified them and given them to election officials to say, hey, these guys have moved. Well, the election officials have a federal process to go in and contact those people via mail. Now, if they don't get anything back, it's obvious that they've changed their address. But instead of election officials taking them off the rolls, which you should do, they put them on the inactive list. A nice database if you want to do just what Sheriff Richard just mentioned. Find the people who have moved, and vote for them.
Vote on their behalf, ladies and gentlemen. The idea for them is vote early, vote often, and it's a tragic reality. Nobody can fix it but we, the people. To learn more about what Mark Gotz and others are doing about education, check out their book and more. It's at theelectionexperts.net. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Sam and Richard. I appreciate having the time to discuss this issue.
We'll talk soon, my friend. Thank you so much. Sheriff Mack, before the end of the hour, I know you got to fly here in a couple of minutes, but I've got to get this story in. LAPD ends flock surveillance contract. They give all kinds of reasons here why, but basically all kinds of people have been pulled over and thought to be criminals and harassed, and it basically isn't reliable and it gets things wrong, and the LAPD got rid of it. People are now calling in saying, where do you guys stand on this? Is this constitutional? Sheriff?
Well, it's not unconstitutional. The misinformation regarding it and how the information that they collect is used can be unconstitutional. But just setting up a camera is not unconstitutional. Okay, that you're out in the public. I could sit there all day at the biggest intersection in New York City or Los Angeles or Safford, Arizona, and film it all I want. But then what do I do with that information is key. And especially, though, if it's government that's taking that information and then they use it against us somehow, that can be very unconstitutional. And so that Los Angeles would actually say it's unconstitutional and get rid of them, then you know you got a big problem, Sam. So.
Amen to that. And so I want people to really clearly understand this, folks. The Los Angeles Police Department declined to renew its contract with Flock Safety after citing serious civil liberties, privacy, data sharing, and privacy concerns, right? Security concerns. So they look at this and they just say, man, it's not good. So it's not bad to set up a camera, folks. Understand that. It's what's being done with the data. It's where it's reported. It's where it's sent. It's how it's used by whom that makes it a serious violation and problem. And I cannot believe, of all places, LAPD decides this. You got to give them a little bit of credit, Sheriff.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, no kidding. That they've come out and sided with civil rights and concerns about the Fourth Amendment. That's absolutely amazing. Now, you know, obviously my cowboy constitutional hat is off to them big time.
Amen. So I want people to clearly understand that, though. Look, we have constitutional concerns, but we need to be wise about when something is unconstitutional. What we don't want to do is run around and say, oh, these cameras are unconstitutional. We lose credibility when we say stuff like that because it's not factually true. The nuance is what's important. The cameras are not unconstitutional. It's what's been being done with the data by whom that's the problem, right?
But also, you know, that reminds me of the cameras used by police all over the country with photo radar and red light cameras.
Sure.
And I believe it's bogus simply because you take out the human factor, that an officer actually sees what's going on instead of a camera where he looks at a picture and then says, and then that officer testifies in court against you. And he wasn't even there. And so you could say all sorts of other reasons why. I ran the red light because there was a skidding car in the rainstorm heading right for me, and I moved out of the way or I would have gotten in an accident. It doesn't show that. And how about I hurry up and sped up because I saw some kids beating up another kid in gang violence, and I was going over there to help him. You know, the camera doesn't see that. An officer would, and an officer would be right there next to you. And so that's why photo law enforcement, traffic enforcement cameras are bogus.
And so if you're a witness, if you're a cop and you're a witness and you say, yeah, I saw this, but you really saw it on camera, how do you know the footage isn't manipulated? How do you know it's really real footage even?
Yeah,
I mean, somebody could have AI manipulated that and showed that you ran the light when you didn't, right?
Right, yeah, exactly. And so the officer literally is testifying about how the camera is effective. And that makes he would require him to be an expert in that particular camera, how they're manufactured, how they are accurate, and they're not. And even if they were, it still violates one rule, and that is the court will ask you first as a witness, were you there? Because they do not allow any hearsay evidence. And so
no, I was not there. Now you're relying on a camera.
But the camera told me. The camera told me you did this. You know,
it's a serious problem, folks. So the nuances are the key to understanding the unconstitutionality. Sheriff, I know you got to fly. We'll talk soon.
Thanks for having me, Sam. Now, do I need to leave my camera on just for?
Nope, you're good. You can fly. Thank you, sir. You're good.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks so much.
Talk to you
Love
soon,
everybody.
my friend.
Thank you. Thank you.
You betcha. Sheriff Richard Mack, ladies and gentlemen, his book, The Democrat Murder of America, Demagoguery in the First Degree, a great book that really highlights the problems we're facing today. Daniel Perkins and Sheriff Richard Mack, murderofamerica.com. The audiobook's up, the Kindle version, the PDF version, the paperback version. Get your copy today. Trump declaring he'd be the greatest communist, really mocking communism, ladies and gentlemen. I got to give Trump credit for this. On the international stage, highlighting how bogus communism is. You'll be bankrupt in 12 months. Nobody will be treated honestly or fair. Moral law goes out the window. It's just, I mean, he did a great job highlighting the truth on this by mocking them. A shout out to Trump is only fair. We also talked to Mark Gotz, doing a great job. TheElectionExperts.net is their website. They're a Florida-based group providing practical instruction on election verification, legal oversight. I mean, and they do a great job, folks. They really do. Glenn Beck highlighting the point now. You're starting to get bigger and bigger people admitting that it was election fraud. Glenn Beck, California's election system isn't broken. It's deliberately rigged, he says over at the blaze.com. And the LAPD ends flock surveillance cameras. Yeah, they declined. They said, man, there's serious concerns. Civil liberties violations, privacy concerns, data sharing concerns, and security concerns. While an audit, believe it or not, found 161 false license plate alerts over only a 2-month period that led to innocent drivers being stopped by cops. They're saying this is unacceptable, and I couldn't agree with them more. But let's be clear, when we say it's unconstitutional, setting up the cameras is not unconstitutional. It's how the information is used and by whom. When government, for example, gets that information, it turns out the camera was erroneous. So same thing Sheriff Mack pointed out with speeding tickets or running a red light. How do you know the camera's information is not bogus? That it didn't get the wrong license plate, or that it didn't, okay, we can go on and on. But folks, you've got to have human interaction. And cops can't be saying, oh, I saw it on the camera even though I wasn't there. That doesn't cut it. How do you know it wasn't AI manipulated? Or how do you know the camera wasn't wrong? Or how do you know the data wasn't manipulated? We can go on. Same thing with elections. That's why we weave these two topics together. What an incredible show. Thank you, Sheriff Mack. Thank you, Mark Gotz. I'm Sam Bushman. We're everywhere on your radio. We're on Rumble, YouTube, Truth Social, X. Spread the word. Share the love. And God save our constitutional republic.
There's a penalty for truth, but it's worth it when you try. Yeah, it's worth it when you try.